Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Dr. Alan Barnard. He is an expert in the theory of constraints. He's helped leaders at Fortune 500 companies. He's worked with individuals in over 70 countries harness the power of what he calls the pro-con cloud method. He also has the Harmony Decision Maker app and helping you and I make better business and personal decisions effectively. In part 1 of the show, we talked about what is the theory of constraints and how we tend to get overloaded when it comes to making a decision, and how to actually boil that down and work out what it actually is that we need to focus on first, second, and third. What are the focuses, and then what do we do next? How do we boil that down? We've looked at how your intuition, what that is, and how your intuition or the need for intuition can actually be a problem if you don't have enough background in the very thing you're trying to develop your intuition around. He explained the theory of constraint to us in a way, in case you missed part 1, you should probably go back and listen to it, but in a way that the average 5-year-old can understand it. I like that a lot. We finished up part 1 of the show talking about this idea of AI, because we're all looking at AI these days. How AI could be a big advantage to us, but the question is, can we trust it? Because a lot of people are very afraid of it, and a lot of people are very excited about it, but is it trustworthy? And Alan talked about this idea of a digital clone. It's a version of you that has your best interests at heart. And we want to talk a little bit more about that trust and building that trust. So let's pick it up from there, Alan.
So I mentioned that our scarcest resource for many years was our limited attention. And if you apply theory of constraints to a constraint, you say the first thing is, how do you stop wasting it? Don't allocate it to people and things. That's not helpful. Make sure you allocate it only to the people and things that are actually helping you achieve more of the goal, that one goal that's most important to you. AI theoretically could solve that constraint. We can create a digital twin of ourselves that can be everywhere all at once, and will give so many people access to us that could never afford having that access. So we can now immediately get access to the best teachers, the best doctors, the best gurus, etc. The question is, well, where's our constraint going to move to? And there's 2 other areas that's also falling in this category of very scarce and precious resource. One is trust, and the other one is motivation. And the reason I call them constraints is that a constraint is not just a scarce resource, but it's a resource that has an asymmetrical response built into it. So what I mean by that, so if you think about attention, it's very, very hard to get somebody's attention. Very easy to lose it. So that's asymmetry in it. If it was totally symmetrical, it would be easy to figure out. Once I have your attention, it would be easy to keep, but I constantly have to invest in gaining your attention.
Every 3 seconds on social media, every 3 seconds, you have to get my attention again. So it's not just keeping my attention, you have to get it again. That's a really fascinating piece for me.
Yeah. Well, trust also has an asymmetry built into it. It's very hard to gain your trust, very easy to lose it, and almost impossible to regain it after I've lost it. You just think about a relationship, romantic relationship. The more somebody has suffered trauma in past relationships, the harder it is to get their trust. And sometimes, despite all of our efforts, we never gain their trust fully. But it's very easy to lose it. And sometimes for the best reason. For example, imagine your romantic partner asking you, what do I look like in this dress? You're in a conflict because you want to be honest, but you don't want to hurt her feelings. So you pick the safest option, which says you look amazing. And then sometime later, when she brings up the dress again, you say, you know what? I just want to give you some feedback. I mean, it's not that you look bad in the dress, but you look so much better in other dresses. And she goes, so you don't like the dress? Well, not that much. So you lied to me. And now I jump immediately because I'm so sensitive. I jump immediately, well, if you could lie to me about a dress, what else are you lying to me about? And before we know it, we're getting divorced.
Apparently about a dress. But you're making a really good point here, because the problem is apparently about something. And this is the truth of the dynamics of relationship in the work that we do, is that the problem appears to be this, but it's never this. We tell people in relationship, you're never fighting about what you're fighting about. It's just never the case. It's always what's underneath that. So you're not fighting about the dress, you're fighting about trust. And if I can't trust you, why the hell am I in a relationship with you? So it's a really great point.
Yeah. And a part of that trust is, as will you always be honest with me? And the question is, do you want me to always be honest with you? Because we lie for good reasons. We lie to protect ourselves and to protect the other side. I gave that example because it shows how hard it is to get trust, how easy it is to lose it.
We lie because for some reason it's not safe to tell the truth. There's a price of telling the truth. And so my qualification is, do you really want to know? And if the answer is yes, are you sure you want to know? Even if what I say is upsetting to you, because now you have double accepted that you want my truth, not the truth, but my truth. Yes, I want to know. Okay, so you don't get to punish me for giving what it is you're asking for. If you do that in all relationships, not romantic, but all of them, you'll find the communication gets a hell of a lot more honest. But you've got to be willing to live with if you're on the other side of that, because you might be, listen, you're a terrible leader and you really think you're great.
Yep. I had an example with my mentor, Dr. Eli Goldrat, that created Theory of Constraints that by chance happens to be his birthday today. He would contact me at all time of the day and send me a document and say, have a look at this. What do you think? And he had told me multiple times that the reason why I was allowed to become so close to him was that I told him the truth. It's like I treat others the way I treat myself, which is don't sugarcoat it, just give it to me brutally honest, right? And then we would get into this huge argument and it would be horrible. And at one point I said to him, Eli, I don't understand. You tell me that you love me because I'm always honest. When I'm honest, you get so upset and you start punishing me for it. What do you want from me? And he said he also reflected on that. He feels horrible about it. But what he realized, to be very honest, is when he's put in a lot of work on something, and I want to ask you for your feedback, what I'm really asking for is please give me credit for the hard work I've put in. Don't tell me now what you can see that's wrong with it. That's not what I need right now. I need that little dopamine rush that says somebody I respect can see that I put in a lot of effort. Tomorrow or sometime later, you can give me the other side. I immediately thought about it's the same thing with a dress, right? She's asking me, she's standing in front of me, how do I look? And what she really needs is getting feedback for, wow, I can see you put in a real effort to look amazing and feel amazing tonight. I'm proud to be with you. Even though I don't like the dress, I appreciate that you've put in so much effort, but it's such a slippery slope when to be honest, when not to be, and how that impacts our trust. And I think that's where AI potentially has a major advantage here, is that I've already seen people that were highly skeptical of AI, that because they are the human in the loop, and they're asking a question and they get feedback. And over time, it's compound. They're really starting to think, maybe this thing actually does have my best interest at heart. Maybe it is actually helpful for me to always look at it from multiple perspectives. And that's why I see in my own personal experiences, we are gaining trust in AI that is much faster than what we could ever gain trust in a person.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting thing. I've seen skeptical people turn around because of that. And so now it becomes, what I've noticed in my conversations with pretty bright individuals is that they didn't trust AI. They discovered that they can trust the AI as it's working for them. They just don't trust the companies. And that's the distinction. That's a good differentiation, because I don't want Elon Musk or Sam Altman telling me what it means to be human, but I do trust the product they've made based on my feedback and based on it getting to know me, that it can tell me the truth. So this distinction in the transhuman movement around consciousness is the distinction. It's where the consciousness lies, and in that, the ethics, because the corporate ethics, I definitely am not trusting of, but I am more trusting of the application based on what I fed it. I think that that's a dynamic that we all are trying to work with. And we have to remember, we're only in the first couple of years of AI being public. It's like, this is crazy. It's infantile. Look at 20 years from now, the exponential growth it's had. What it will be in 20 years will be insane.
Right. It sort of carries in the third type of constraint that we might have. So for some people, it's not attention or trust, but it's motivation. I classify it as a constraint, not because it's only scarce, but it also has the same asymmetrical response built into it. Very hard to gain motivation, very easy to lose it. And once I've lost it, even harder to get it back. I'll give an example. You probably know Rich Shefrin, this sort of guru of the gurus in online marketing. And I was talking with him. He recently launched a program where he's sharing the prompts that he's developed to teach ChatGPT everything about you. So imagine it's a prompt of multiple personality tests that you go through. So ChatGPT is asking you the question, you answer, and then you allow it to reach certain conclusions. So the quality of the response of ChatGPT and any AI depends on two things. One is the quality of your prompt. The more specific you are, the better the response will be. And the secondly is the context that it has. The more it knows about you, the more it can decide what is generally the best response, but specifically what's the best response for you. So I asked Rich, how has ChatGPT helped you with motivation? And he said to me, Alan, it's been a game changer. I said, tell me about it. I'm curious to find out. He said, so he wakes up in the morning and he knows he's got a webinar to do, and he's committed a timeline, so he has to do it. There's no going out, right? That's one way to overcome your procrastination and ADHD, is you make external commitments. But he has no motivation. So he's walking down to the kitchen, preparing coffee, and he starts talking to ChatGPT, and he says, I have a big problem I need your help with. I need to do this bloody webinar, and I have zero motivation. And ChatGPT responds very empathetically and saying, absolutely get it. It's something that you have been struggling with for a long time. Fully get it. You're having some coffee. That's definitely going to help. But by the way, tell me what were you thinking about? What are you going to talk about on the webinar? And he says, well, I had some couple of options. These are my options. He says, very interesting. I mean, all of those are pretty good, but which one do you feel most passionate about? And he shares. He says, before he knew it, an hour later, he's working on a bloody webinar. And he said, ChatGPT totally manipulated him in a positive way, because it's like one of those things that understands tiny habits and the fact that sometimes it's just getting started. The thing is, like, I do 100 push-ups every morning when I wake up. And when I have zero motivation, the advice I got from my ex-wife is just do one. So you go down, you do one, and you think, while I'm down here, I might as well do 10. And before you know it, you've done close to 100. You might not. That part of it, I'm so excited about, because we all have these dark shadows that follow us around that cause us to waste our attention, our trust and motivation. And if AI can make a positive contribution that helps us to make sure we don't waste our attention, trust, or motivation, and only focus it on a few things, and maybe even the one thing that will give us most of the benefit to making progress on the goal, I think that's a game changer.
Like you said, motivation is like, I really dislike that word. People say, are you a motivational speaker? I go, hell no. I'm so not interested in motivating you to do anything because motivation is so transitional. Particularly if you're ADHD, if something comes out of left field and you're off on a tangent for the next 3 hours. But what this is tapping into in the way that you're describing it is more than motivation. You're tapping into a primary driver, and that's more important. So now the motivation will last because, like, something comes up. No, I'm on this path. It's like people say, how do you produce so much, Dov? You are a content machine. You write all these articles and you put out all these things. The answer is because I'm totally engrossed. I love it. I love it. And other things come up and I just start another article. And then I start that and then I come back to this one. So I've got 50 articles that have started that will maybe never get done. I don't know. But I'm in this primary driver. And so I can't lose motivation for me. I don't understand the writer's block. I don't get it. At this point in my life, it might be different next week. What you're talking about is teaching AI to tap into what it is that gets you going, that puts some fuel in the tank in a way that some bloody rah-rah affirmation will never do.
I agree with you. I think motivation is a pretty bad thing. What I think about differently is like, what's the catalytic conditions that will enable me to take the action that can allow me to make progress? So I'm thinking about if X, then Y, right? And Y is the action that will move me closer to the goal. So the more I understand what are those conditions, the X, because sometimes it's just X plus something will get me to take the action, or X minus something will get me to take the action. And that to me is like, the more we teach AI about us, the better it will understand those conditions that if they exist will get you to do the right thing. And sometimes if those conditions are in place, be very careful, because that might be the catalyst for doing the wrong thing. That's especially true with relationships. Small triggering event can create very different reactions and responses from
Now, I know that you have been having some conversations with some pretty big, powerful people about the theory of constraints in the big world, as in the Fortune 500, in the actual, like the biggest of the big companies, about how they're applying it.
Yeah.
Have you had any surprises about companies that are applying it? And let me be clear here. I think that sometimes people who are applying something don't know they're applying it until they have a conversation with Dr. Alan Barnard and go, oh, that's what you're doing.
It's fascinating that you asked. I was recently asked by Jay Abraham. He was presenting to Tony Robinson's Platinum Group, and he asked me if I could do a presentation. But he said, I have a request for you. Not many slides, not even few slides, just one slide. I want you to share with them the one thing that makes all the difference. So what I did was I reached out to people that I have direct contact with that are top entrepreneurs, or people that I have direct contact with, one of their direct contacts, and asked them to ask the question on my behalf. One of them that was fascinating was Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. And he also applies theory of constraints, a big fan of the goal. And I asked this person, can you check what is it that he took away from the goal and how does he apply it? And it gave me a beautiful example of how a CEO must figure out where to pay attention to without micromanaging. And it was this idea that every time he engages with one of his teams, while he's engaging with them, there is 100% attention focusing on them, on that division. Then what he does is he goes, let me remind you of the goal. Let me remind you where the current constraint or bottleneck is, and what's the one problem we want to solve to get more of that thing. It could be that we don't have enough of it, or we can't do it fast enough. What's the one problem? And even though there are many other problems, but according to 80-20, we know that they will all explain a little bit less and less and less and less. So whether you pick problem number one or problem number two, as long as it's a major contribution to that gap, What it does very effectively is for the next week or whatever time period, like a sprint almost, I want you to focus only on that thing and solve and design an experiment so we test it. Problem, conflict, innovation, experiment. So those are six ones. What's the one goal? What's the one constraint, the thing I don't have enough of? What's the one problem that blocks me to get more, either by not wasting it or by getting actually more? What's the one conflict? Because that's where resistance comes in. That's where my technique of the pro-con cloud comes in, is I have a problem, I have a solution. What I realize is problem solving is finding a solution to a problem. The constraint is I don't have enough demand. Okay. The problem is I don't have a decisive competitive edge. Okay. I have a solution. I can create a competitive edge by offering a lower price or creating more value or something. But there's always an alternative, which is don't implement that solution or try another solution. And what I realize is that innovation is different from problem solving. Innovation is trying to find a solution without trade-offs, without resistance. So if you imagine the two options that I have, do something, don't do something, both of them have got unique pros above them. Both of them have got unique cons. If I go for my solution, it's actually not a viable option because I have to give up the pro of the alternative of the status quo, and I have to live with the con of the new solution. So think about, say the problem is you feeling anxious. And generally speaking, when you're feeling anxious, you overeat. And now there's a solution to not overeat, to stop overeating. But the status quo is to keep overeating or snack the things that you like. Why is stopping this addiction not a viable option? Because there's some unique positive that you get from the overeating, which is it allowed me to deal with the stress by just giving me something different to do. And there's a con of that stopping, which is it might require a lot of effort and willpower and maybe even cost more, etc., to switch a diet or whatever it is. So an innovation would be that I've added something to the solution that I don't have to give up the ability to cope with stress, which is I might adopt meditation or exercise. There's something else I must add to deal with the fact that it might require a lot of effort, etc. Maybe I get a personal coach because I'm not disciplined enough. That's a true innovation.
So let's put this in real world, and you tell me if maybe I'm out to lunch. So let's take a person's in a marriage. They're in a relationship. I think most people can relate to this. They're in a relationship. It's dead as a doornail. It's a dead relationship. And so the friend says, you should leave. But the person says, yeah, but, and now they start talking about the problems. If I leave, then I've got to go out in the single scene and I've got to give up this lifestyle. I tell people all the time, nobody's doing anything without a payoff. I don't care how shitty it is or how fantastic it is. It's not just because it's fantastic. It's because even if it's shitty, there are things that are in there that are payoff you don't want to give up. And so that I don't want to give it up is what keeps people stuck. And so what you're saying is on the other side is, well, if you don't have to give up the lifestyle and you could still be not in this relationship, what would you do then? Is that the idea?
That is exactly, and it's what we've done, just to give you an example of how AI can help. So I've trained AI to follow my pro-con cloud method. So it turns out we can tell it how to think. So it will ask me, so what's your problem? And I go, my marriage is dead, right? No more excitement. We're just going through the motions. And it will ask me, so Alan, why is that bad for you? And I give it my answer. And then it says, why is it bad for the people that you care about? And you give it your answer. And then it pauses and it says, have a look at the reasons that you've written. Do you think that those reasons are strong enough that you make a decision about dealing with this? And you say, yes. You say, okay, let's go to step 2. What's your options? Is the status quo still an option? You say, yes. You say, okay, then you have a conflict of change versus no change. A separate or divorce versus don't. Great. Now you can ask it, tell me what the pros and cons are of each of these two options, unique pros and cons. And I can do it in two ways. I can fill in the answers and ask it to check it, or I can ask it, based on what it knows about me, to fill in the answers and I check it. And that's basically what step 2 is about, that concept of define a problem precisely, and I'm halfway to a solution. By defining any problem as an unresolved conflict, I'm actually halfway to a solution. Because now I realize the problem is not the problem, it's the fact that I'm stuck and I don't know what to do. Whichever option I pick has downsides. I have to give up some pros and live with some cons. And then you say, okay, let's go to step 3, which is what's the innovation? What option do I have or can I create that can give me all the pros of both options with none of the cons? And there again, I can ask AI to do it for me, and I check it to see which is the most practical and lowest cost and lowest risk, etc. Or I can fill in the options and I can ask it to evaluate it and give me some feedback. So that to me is like where the real excitement comes in, is that what we are looking for is innovations. We're not looking for a solution. The mistake that we make is we jump from the problem to the solution, not realizing that the solution is always one of two options.
I think that's so great and such a good way to look at it and understand it. From a neuroscientific point of view, the Habenula, which is a part of the brain that is the rewards and punishment center of the brain, tiny little part of your brain, is the part of your brain that is responsible for what we call the no-do problem, which is I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. We've all got that. And this is kind of a way to bring the prefrontal cortex into the equation and say, well, what's the innovation here? And to be able to step outside of yourself and use AI to do it is bloody marvelous.
Absolutely. One of my big aha moments was we can't challenge an assumption or belief that's in the subconscious. How do we get it from the subconscious to the conscious? Is we just ask the right question. And the right question is often, you know what to do, why aren't you doing it? It could be that you don't see the benefit of doing it or the negative of not doing it, which implies that there's some level of ignorance. But most of the time, the person that smokes can tell you what the positive is of stopping and the negative if they don't. It's the fear, it's the exaggerated fear of what they will have to give up or gain that they don't want. So just by asking that question directly, what are you scared of losing if you give up smoking? Or what are you scared of gaining that you don't want if you gave up smoking? And that transfers that assumption or belief from the subconscious. And once it's there, once I have written it down or I've typed it on an app or I share it with somebody or ChatGPT, now I can check and challenge it. Now I can question it and say, is that really true? Even if it is true, is there not another way of satisfying that deeper need?
Alan, as always, this has been a delicious, wonderful conversation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you've shared, for your wisdom, and for really awakening a lot of things inside of us. It's really important. I want to make sure people can find you, find out about all your resources. Please let people know where they can find out more about you.
Sure. My social media handle is just Dr. Alan Barnard. I have a YouTube channel and all my social media, so they're welcome to go there. I share a lot of research insights and case studies on that. And then all the range of apps that we've developed, they can just go to harmonyapps.com. The last app that I mentioned is just Harmony Decision Maker. They can find that on their app store, and we're about to launch it with AI. So you can really benefit from either getting the AI to do all the hard work and you just check and challenge it, or you can do the hard work and get AI to check and challenge you. But always the solution is much, much better than what we could have come up with ourselves.
Beautiful. Well, I hope you'll stay with us to the end, Alan. And for you, dear listener, we'll make sure that all those links are, of course, posted in the show notes. If you didn't catch anything, don't worry about it. Just scroll down. It'll be in the show notes. And remember, if you came in at part 2 and you found this fascinating, go back to part 1. I assure you there's lots of gems in both. It's going to be great value to you. And for those who control the meaning for the tribe, control the movement of the tribe. Leaders committed to positively shaping the political and business landscape know that they've got to tap into what drives human beings and drives their behavior, and that's the emotional source code. I'm Dov Baron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to drive their team. Because unified actualized meaning is the single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. Remember, we need your help in staying relevant, so please go to wherever it is you tune in from and do us a favor. Rate, review, and of course, subscribe to the show. A big thank you to you, if you are a regular listener, for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about the decisions you're making, and can you really trust them? Maybe you need to apply the theory of constraints. And if you're not sure what that is, because you just came in, go back to the beginning, because Alan explains it beautifully. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you, tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, in your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.